Welcome to week 8 of Rondé and Tiki presented by SuperBook. Rondé, it's about that time. We're almost at the halfway. Actually, we're not at the halfway point. You got to go like one more game and like, I don't know, a quarter and a half before we're at the halfway point of the NFL season. But we're getting there where teams who are underachieving or supposed to be good are going to have coaches on the hot seat. But we'll get to that in a second. I can't predict anything in the NFL anymore. It
Given
is impossible.
I've
The
given
fact
up.
that the Detroit Lions got destroyed by the Baltimore Ravens it's flabbergasting to me. There's no way to predict what's going to happen week to week in this league anymore. It's insane.
By the way, we are 2 months into the season. I mean, 4 weeks. It's week 8, so 4 weeks. That's 2 months. We can call it whatever we want to call it. At the end of the day, we've watched 7 games already, which I still can't believe. I was getting ready again, and it's like week 8. How is it week 8? But dude, you're right, man. I've given up trying to predict. There's too many blowouts. There's too many upsets. Obviously, we both played the game. We know that it happens. It's not as if we should be surprised when the Pittsburgh Steelers go out to the Los Angeles Rams on a cross-country trip in a game where they're underdogs and win. I mean, it just happens. Now, what I wasn't expecting was what you just talked about. Detroit getting beat by Baltimore, Minnesota on Monday night beating San Francisco. Although that's something more to talk about as we get going in this show. But I think at this time, the underachiever theme that you mentioned at the top of this show, we got to talk about it. There's too many underachievers. Number one,
Yeah.
the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah. Brandon Staley is such an interesting coach. He was the DC for 1 year in Los Angeles with the Rams in 2020. They had a pretty good defense that year. But also, let's not forget who was on that defense. It was Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey and Von Miller.
Right.
There's a ton of talent on that defense. He becomes a head coach. And we know what happens when a defensive-minded head coach joins a team that needs a quarterback. The quarterback almost always underachieves. And despite, I think, I think some good things from Herbert, it always feels like he misses this throw here. He should be making this elite play there. Brandon Staley is definitely hitting the hot seat right now. I think Ron Rivera in Washington is hitting the hot seat, not because he's a bad coach. I think he's got a raw deal of cards right now, to be honest with you, because the talent's not fully vetted out, especially on the defensive secondary size. I mean, Emmanuel Forbes, who was their first pick out of Mississippi State, he already got benched a couple of weeks ago because he refused to tackle anybody. But Ron Rivera, with a new ownership group out there and Magic Johnson already tweeting up a storm, he's likely in trouble. I think we excuse like the Denvers and the Arizonas and Carolinas, these first-time coaches. Eberflus has probably been on the hot seat for a year and a half in Chicago. But I think it's our boy, Mike Vrabel in Tennessee, who might be surprisingly also on the hot seat.
Well, his team is incomplete. I think after a year ago, when they fired John Robinson, the general manager, they realized the team wasn't put together right. And so now you're trying to find, I mean, this entire season, hasn't it felt like this entire season that every star player on the Tennessee Titans was in trade talks? I mean, when you're talking about Derrick Henry leaving, and then you you trade Kevin Byard to the Philadelphia Eagles, you're basically giving up. So in a sense, that almost gives him a pass, right? It almost gives him we understand that you don't have what you need to be successful, certainly not at quarterback, especially if Ryan Tannehill is hurt. Malik Willis is not it at all. The drafted quarterback, I'm blanking his name, Levis, he's definitely not ready. So he might get a pass, but I think he's certainly in that conversation. He's been there long enough. And, you talk about Super Bowl windows. That's what makes me think that a guy like Brandon Staley's is on the hot seat. The interesting one, and you didn't really get into it much, but is when you talk about Ron Rivera, because Ron's been around the block, man. Ron's been a head coach at Carolina for a long time. He's been here actually for a number of years. But they go out and sign a new offensive coordinator, and Yeah, and to be honest with you, I don't think Eric Bieniemy's getting it done. This quarterback, I mean, obviously he's not Patrick Mahomes, but there's answers not being questions not being answered on offense. To have guys on the line of scrimmage not blocked, and watching Sam Howell trying to avoid, you know,
Yeah.
rush after rush after rush, yet still throwing the ball 40 times a game. You start asking the question, is it really all Ron? I mean, Ron mentioned it in preseason. You remember when he said, what did he say? It's something along the lines of he's too hard on the guys or something like
Well,
that.
no. Well, the guys were complaining that he was hard on them.
That's
So
what
I've
it was. Yeah,
I've had
right.
Washington 3 times, and so I've talked to EB, and I like EB a lot, but he's got a pass. For instance, we did our production meeting last weekend because I had the Giants hosting the Commanders, and the first thing I said to EB was, "EB, why do you hate your running backs, bro?" And it's almost like in his mind, he knows his run game is not good enough to create explosives, but he also wants to continue to grow himself with Sam Howell. And the only way to do that is to drop him back. But the
Right.
issue, Rondé, is that their left guard, Sadiq Charles, is third or fourth in the NFL in pressures allowed. Their right guard is second, or Sam Cosme, he's second or third or whatever it is in pressures allowed, and their
Right.
right tackle Andrew Wiley is like number one in pressures allowed. So they're just not good up front, at least not good enough to hold up against good defensive lines. And so the Giants last weekend, despite coming into the game with 5 sacks on the season, had 6 in the game. So if you're going to drop back 45 times and not really have a running presence, defenses like what Wink wants to do, they're going to come after you, right?
Yeah.
And they're going to create, pressure and lack of time for Sam Howell to do anything. And so, yes, it's Eric Bieniemy's fault. Yes, it's Ron Rivera's fault. Yes, it's Sam Howell's fault. It's like the whole system is broken right now. They can't figure out how to get out of their way, but somebody's going to be the fall guy. I don't know who it is yet, and usually it goes all the way up.
It goes all the way up.
But it's somebody's going to be the fall guy there, and I hope it's not EB because he's worked and waited so long for this kind of opportunity.
Right.
But it feels inevitable with especially with Jonathan Allen, one of their great defensive linemen on that team, screaming, "I'm tired of this, you know what?" at the end of the game. It's been 7 years, and it's the same bleep over and over and over and over and over again.
That might go down as one of the most epic rants of all time.
Dude. Oh man, tell us how you really feel, dude.
Right. If you're the reporter, you just can't ask him the question. You know that you could see it on his face, dude.
Yeah.
He was getting ready to go. But to the Redskins, I'm sorry, God, why do I love calling this team the Redskins still? The Commanders, look, they have a big loss to Giants last week. They're 3-4 in their division, so that was a big loss to the New York Giants, who have not been playing well, and we got a discussion about their quarterback later. At least I can have a discussion about their quarterback later. But the Commanders lost 3 in a row in the middle of the year so far. They beat the Falcons somehow, and then lose to the Giants. And then guess who they have next week, Tiki? Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh yeah,
1:00 game.
Who they took it to overtime 2 weeks ago and almost beat.
Right. So this is it's not rubber meets the road type time for, I think, the Commanders right now, but the reality is they're looking at 3-5, and a lot of questions are going to be asked, because I don't think anybody's going into that game thinking that they're going to beat Philadelphia. Which brings me to my next question. Parity rules supreme in the NFL, dude. I'm looking at the standings in the NFL right now, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 teams in the NFL right now, Tiki, with 3 or 4 wins, which means that and only one team has one loss, and that's Philadelphia. So anybody can win any week. And right now, I love looking at those. If the playoffs started today scenario sheets, I wouldn't trust a single one of them now.
Well, I mean, it's the two teams because Kansas City only has one loss as well, but there's two teams that have one loss that seem to be able to win no matter how good
What
or
that
bad
run
they
looks like.
play.
Right.
And it's Kansas City and Philadelphia, who obviously, interestingly enough, are the defending Super Bowl contenders from a year ago. And it's funny because it very rarely do we say it's this team and everybody else. But this year it feels like, I mean, there's a couple down at the bottom. Carolina's not going to win a game this year. I mean, maybe they win one, they steal one on the road. Arizona's really bad. Denver feels like they're stripping down. But for the most part, everybody else is kind of like just hanging around each other. The Giant, they could be, any team could beat any team. It feels like each and every week. And it's the question is, as we get to or sit here at the midpoint of the season, who rises? Like who separates themselves into a second tier? Because right now it's the top tier, and that's two teams, Philadelphia and Kansas City. It's the bottom tier, which is Carolina and the Denvers of the world and Arizona's, those teams that really don't have a chance to compete. And then it's everybody else, right? And it's a lot of teams that are sitting in the everybody else mode right now, which again makes football interesting, but it makes it really complicated because I feel like football, we're supposed to know, like, oh, this team is supposed to win this game. This team is supposed to do whatever. You can't say that about any game in the NFL anymore.
Yeah, you're supposed to be able to say this team was built to do that. Like Monday night, the
San
49ers
Francisco, exactly.
right,
It's the perfect example.
built to rush the passer. Kirk Cousins dropped back 45 times and wasn't touched
I know.
on Monday night. I mind blowing. I mean, to me, it begs a question because we're at that point of the year where you start having to say this: is Philly the best team in football, or is it Kansas City? To me, after watching what I watched with Philly this past week, it might be Philly. It was the first game. This is the first game where Philly felt like they were complete. Jalen Hurts looked unbelievable. He looked like even when he was under pressure, he looked confident enough to get out and run with it, or just push the ball down the field and let AJ Brown go make play after play after play.
Right.
How many targets?
Not perfect. Not perfect, but it doesn't need to be.
It doesn't need to be. How many targets did he have the other night? Like 12 targets and 10 catches. It's just one of those things. They were weak in the secondary. We go out and sign Kevin Byard, who's got the third most interceptions in his time in the league. Actually, a homecoming for him. He was born in Philly, which is always kind of cool. But the reality is, they went out and did something and got themselves better at one position where they were weak. And I think it might be that attitude, not necessarily the player, but that attitude from Howie Roseman, the general manager, that, hey, we need this. We're going to get it. We got 10 days to do it. We're going to do it right now and leave no questions about what our intentions are this year. So in that regard, I like Philly.
By the way, 15 targets for A.J. Brown, 10 receptions, 137 yards, and a touchdown. But you're right. You nailed something with Howie Roseman. He understands the window, like the proverbial window. And their window is right now. Jalen Hurts is on the early end of his long-term extension, so it's not really punitive to the cap. So if they need to go sign guys or trade for guys, like they did a couple years ago with A.J. Brown to pair with Devontae Smith, at some point their offensive line is going to run out of just legs. They're just getting a little bit older. It's win now. And so we have a safety issue. Guess what? We're going to go figure out how to bring in a safety. And he does that. So you give him credit for understanding that the trade deadline, which used to not be a thing in the NFL, can truly make your team more impactful. They have a good defense already. They stopped the run, which is how they shut down Miami. You shut down Miami's running game. Raheem Mostert, I feel like early in the game, he had like 7 carries for like -9 yards. You shut down their run game, make them one-dimensional. Maybe you can contain them. And that's exactly what they did. So I think you're right. It's Philly. But Kansas City, in my mind, is until they prove that they can lose, right? They lost one game this year. It was the first game of the season against the Detroit Lions. But since then, the Kansas City Chiefs they dominate. The Chargers game this past weekend was supposed to be close. I think the line was 3.5 or something like that. And you felt like, all right, the Chargers, this is their chance. Granted, they always choke and they always miss and they always mess up, but this is their chance in Kansas City. They get destroyed. Pat Mahomes threw for 420 something yards. So I want to say Philly, like you said, but Kansas City just finds a way, and they're consistently there, and they've been there for half a decade already. I can't discount them before they start losing regularly, which hasn't happened in 5 years.
You can bloviate on Kansas City all you want. I'm going to throw one out there before we go to our first break here. The Jacksonville Jaguars. Nobody's talking about this team. We talked about them the other week. Yeah. You know, Trevor Lawrence can be a little up and down. He can be inconsistent, but he's got a plethora of weapons to throw the football to. And Travis Etienne, dude, he's fourth in the league in yards. I think only Christian McCaffrey and Raheem Mostert have more touchdowns than him.
Yep.
If they play defense like they've been playing defense the past couple of weeks now, granted, Buffalo was struggling a little bit when they played them. They just beat New Orleans, who's also struggling a little bit on defensive side of the ball. But besides Kansas City, who are on a 6-game winning streak, the next longest win streak in the NFL is the Jacksonville Jaguars at 4. So we'll talk about them.
Yeah, well, so much of this is coaching. Doug Peterson does not get enough credit for what he's done everywhere that he has gone. He's been a difference maker.
You are exactly right.
Rondé, pro and college football, hockey, basketball, it's all happening right now. And there's no better place to wager on all of it than SuperBook Sports. When you sign up, deposit, and wager in the same day, SuperBook will give you a bonus up to $250. Plus, SuperBook Sports gives you the chance to compete against Vegas. They don't have ridiculous computer formulas making their odds, just a team of the world's best odds makers on site in Las Vegas. When the sports world gets busy, it's time to get busy yourself winning some money. So download the SuperBook Sports app or visit superbook.com to wager and win today. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, peeps. Tiki and Rondé back here. You see what I did there? I gave Tiki his proper billing instead of Rondé and Tiki, presented by SuperBooks. Tiki, question of the day for me is I watched a lot of football this weekend. One of them because it's the Buffalo Bills and they're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. I wanted to watch Bills. So it leads me to the question, most concerning loss of the weekend. I got 3 of them listed here. Buffalo losing to Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And number 2, obviously one on Monday night, Minnesota beating 49ers. And then the question, are Lions fool's gold having lost to the Ravens? So those are the 3. Let's start with the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
How concerning is this loss for this Bills team when you just talked about a Super Bowl window? Are they still in their Super Bowl window? And does this loss tell you anything? Because the Patriots stink.
I mean, when Mac Jones is doing the gritty, or at least trying to, whatever the hell that touchdown celebration was, something's wrong, man. And so let me back up a week. The Buffalo Bills hosted, they didn't travel to the Meadowlands. They hosted the New York Giants and did not score for 3 quarters, dude. 3 quarters. I know Wink is good. I know he likes to bring pressure, but guess what? In that game, he didn't bring pressure at all. He dropped back to I think he rushed like 2% of the time and played man coverage, or at least zone and man under, and forced Josh Allen to make tight window throws over and over and over again. And he just didn't. So here's what I think happened. When Brian Daboll left and became the head coach of the New York Giants, there was a yin and yang up in Buffalo with Josh Allen, with Brian Daboll, who's the, come on, kid, let's go and do this. I'm going to teach you this. And Ken Dorsey was on the other side, like, your steps need to be this. You need to focus. You need to get to this depth. You need to do, like, it was a yin and yang, like a good cop, bad cop. Like, I'm going to take your
good analogy, by the way.
Yeah, your positives and your negatives and pull them all together, and it's going to make you into this complete player. And so you lose this nurturer in Brian Daboll, and you have this stickler for the details in Ken Dorsey, who I really like. I really do. But without that nurturer,
even if he is a little high strung.
Who?
Ken Dorsey.
Oh yeah, but you lose that, Rondé, and all of a sudden, what fills it? It's Josh Allen's ego. And so Josh Allen has become this I can make any throw, I could do anything I want. And defenses have figured him out in that regard. And
You
so
know what else?
there's like a little lack of discipline that started to creep into this team. Now you lose Matt Milano defensively, and despite people not thinking that he was a core catalyst of that defense, he was, because he was dynamic and he was everywhere. So they lost the coordinator, and they lost some of that offensive punch, and they've lost just a little step on defense, and teams are able to take advantage of that middle level, that second level, and they're beatable. It's as simple as that. They're just a beatable team at this point.
They lost Matt Milano, who's a great player, by the way.
Yeah.
They lost Tre'Davious White, who is a great player, by the way, and their young secondary of Kier Elam, who was a first-round draft pick out of Florida a couple of weeks ago. Everybody's just picking on him, but I think the real struggle. And by the way, Mack and Gesicki, their Giddy is pretty unmatched.
Oh, bad, right? Unmatched, bad,
unmatched way, yes, unmatchable way. But I think the real issue with Buffalo is they cannot no longer run the football. When you watch them, and you watch how many times they're in third or seven or long, and then you see what defense have decided they're going to do. They're going to take away Diggs and make Gabe Davis or either one of the tight ends. Dawson Knox is hurt, by the way. So Dalton Kincaid, rookie now. Yeah. Make them win games for you. Make Josh Allen have to find those throws. It makes this team very, very easy to defend, one-dimensional. And then you're seeing less of the Josh Allen, let me be the runner and extend plays and win this, win every play by being the extender. And they're figured out. It's not only been 2 weeks ago against the Giants, and last week against the Patriots. It was 3 weeks ago in Jacksonville. I think they've scored 13 points in the first half of the last 3 games.
Yeah.
This Patriots game, I mean, it was close on paper at the end, but they scored 10 points in the fourth quarter to make that respectable. So there's issues here. Now this week they're going against the Buccaneers at home Thursday night, first game of the week. They're plus 8.5. 42 is the over and under if you care. But I'm sitting here thinking, and this is homerish of me, of course, to say this, but the plus 325 for the Bucks, I might take that.
You have to take that.
Why wouldn't you take that?
Of course. Buffalo's beatable. I mean, so if the number is that large,
that is a big number, dude.
And this is in Tampa.
No, it's in Buffalo.
It's in Buffalo. Oh, that's why, because of the weather. They're doing the weather. They're doing the weather thing.
It's not going to be bad weather up there.
Yeah.
Bucks.
We'll see.
Bucks.
What about the 49ers? The 49ers are, I mean, I almost excuse their loss because Debo was out, and without him, and I like Brandon Ayuk, all right, I like George Kittle. Chris McCaffrey was healthy. He had another touchdown. I mean, he always has touchdowns. But it just felt less dynamic without that. And I hate to use this term to describe Debo Samuel, but it is what it is. He's the super gadget, right? I don't want to say he's a gadget player that does, jet sweep screens and stuff like that. He's not that player, but he is that. I can be anywhere on the field and do anything that any skill position player can do. And it creates a game planning mismatch for Kyle Shanahan. Without that, they just don't have that dynamic player. Like the man against replacement for him doesn't exist on this team.
So let me ask you a question, because this is what I've been digging on all night after watching that game on Monday. Without Debo Samuel, the play action pass game is severely hampered, right? Because all that creativity, Shanahan he makes play calls that make quarterbacks dream. They're easy. They're easy completions for him.
Yeah, he's scheming guys open.
Right. And I don't think, and this is my question, I don't think that Brock Purdy is an overly talented quarterback. Like, he doesn't have the arm strength. It's most everything he does is predicated on the timing of the throw. Guys have to be running the spots, and if they don't get to the spot, the ball gets intercepted. Like the last two drives of that Minnesota game where they had a chance to go win, he's trying to throw spot balls, and the receiver doesn't get there. Jennings doesn't get there on either one of them, and it's an interception. So my question is, can this team win without Deebo Samuel? Because I know we could talk about Christian McCaffrey, who is by far the best running back in the league. I mean, whatever much he makes, it's not enough. The guy is legitimately the reason the running back market is staying afloat, because he's unique. The only guy that's even close to him is Saquon. But without a Deebo Samuel, because much like Tua in that game we watched Philly, without that running game, without the ability to call those gadget type plays, or be able to fall back on just kind of confusing the defense and making the throws easy for your quarterback, are they good enough to win? Especially if they're not getting to the quarterback on defense and winning on that side of the ball.
Well, the answer is no, because we all loved Brock Purdy. His first 8 starts where he was kind of undefeated and felt like, man, this guy's going to be in the MVP conversation. But he was drafted as the last player in the NFL draft for a reason, right? The skills are lacking. So when you start putting it all on him and forcing him to do the things that, drop back quarterbacks without the gadgets have to do, he's just lacking. And I'm not saying he's not going to ever be great at that, but he's also on his second year. Second-year quarterbacks across the league that are asked to do that. Just look at Zach Wilson, right? Look at
Mac Jones.
Mac Jones. Let's look at any of these young quarterbacks that are asked to play that way. It's very, very hard. And so he's coming down to earth without all of the scheming and the game planning help that Kyle Shanahan provides. Now, it's not terminal for this team, because I do think that they're very good defensively and they'll get themselves right. And Chris McCaffrey is going to have one of those games where he's going to have 200 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns. So they're going to be fine. But just kind of like the Bills and some of these other squads, on any day they could lose. Miami, they could lose. And it's funny, you bring up the common denominator because while we think these two teams, Miami and San Francisco, are like pass happy, it's really predicated on the run.
100%.
So San Francisco loses Deebo Samuel, who's their other runner with Chris McCaffrey, and the Miami Dolphins lose Devon Achane, who is their other runner with Raheem Mostert, and the offense struggles. So you need those pieces, and if you don't have them, it's the replacement pieces aren't as good. It's as simple as that.
By the way, 49ers, in case anybody cares, at home, -5. Cincinnati Bengals coming off their bye week. Get right. 49ers, and I know Steve Wilks is a good defensive coordinator. He's taking over for DeMeco Ryans. This team only has 15 sacks on the year. When they don't pressure the quarterback, they are not nearly as good on defense as we have been saying that they are. They're actually only being saved by leading the league in interceptions. Their takeaways are the main factor. All right, last one. Concerning losses are the Detroit Lions, your boys' team.
Yeah.
Fool's gold. They just gave up 38 points and 503 yards. And Aaron Glenn, I don't know what you were doing on defense. You got away from playing zone. You felt like you had to play man because everybody plays man against the Baltimore Ravens and somehow succeeds. But the fact of the matter is, it did not work.
Rondé,
so it's loss concerning.
It's not, because their defense is at a mismatch. Like it was at a mismatch in this game. But the reason they lost this game is because they started this game 3 and out, time possession, 1 minute and 40 seconds.
Yep.
Offense, it's Detroit's offense. 3 and out, 1 minute and 20 seconds. 3 and out, 2 minutes and 13 seconds. Meanwhile, the Baltimore Ravens went touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. This game was over in the first drive of the second quarter. Right? Once you let Lamar and this offense get that far in front of you, you're not coming back. Because, like, I don't want to say they played 4 minutes the whole basic second half, but it felt like they were just hanging on. Is all right, we're not losing this game unless you guys are miraculous, and we don't see you being miraculous because our defense actually isn't that bad. Good luck. And so to me, this game ended because Detroit's offense didn't respond to the explosion of offense. 75-yard touchdown drive, 68-yard touchdown drive, 92-yard touchdown drive, and then for good measure, the fourth one was a 80-yard touchdown drive. Meanwhile, they go punt, turnover on downs, punt, turnover on downs, interception before they even got close to scoring a touchdown in the third quarter.
My only reason for concern is that Baltimore's defense is not great in the secondary right now. They have good players, but they are not great in the secondary. And Jared Goff threw the ball 53 times and did not score. Their one touchdown came from Jahmyr Gibbs, who had a good game. He had a good game running the ball. Yeah, well, in lieu of Montgomery, who was out this week. That's my level of concern because this team was built to throw the football. They're the team that's not it's built the other way than the teams we were just talking about. They throw the football so they can then run the football. Because Jared Goff has been very, very good this year with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Although we didn't even talk about what's his name missing out this game for the Lions for personal reasons. But they're -8 at home versus the Raiders. It's a perfect get-right game. If you're taking the Raiders, you're crazy because – as we said earlier, I think Josh McDaniels on the hot seat for being first coach fired. So there is that.
Marvin Jones, you were talking about.
Yes, Marvin Jones. That's who I was thinking about. Right.
Yeah. I mean, kind of important.
Personal reasons. I always wonder what the hell does personal reasons mean? Why don't you just say what it is?
I don't know. I hope it's nothing bad. Let's put it that way. And we'll leave it at that.
This is true.
All right, we'll come back, Rondé. We got to ask you, ask me. But first, can you beat Vegas this football season? SuperBook Sports give you the chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms, no guys across the pond setting lines for American sports. Just the best team of odds makers in the business behind the counter at the SuperBook in Las Vegas. Plus, SuperBook features some of the best odds boosts and promo bets anywhere. So download the SuperBook Sports app or visit superbook.com and start your battle against Vegas right now. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Last segment of Rondé and Tiki here, presented by SuperBook. It's Ask You, Ask Me, and then we'll get some picks. Rondé, since I can't answer this, since I have this game, Tyrod Taylor or Tyrod Taylor? I asked him this question last week because we did their game, and he said, my mama says Tyrod, but everybody calls me Tyrod. So I was like, all right, so what do you want me to call you? Said, I don't care. So I switched throughout the game. It was like Tyrod and Tyrod. So I'll call him what his mama calls him. Tyrod Taylor or Daniel Jones? Who's more suited here?
Well, here's the question. Is Daniel Jones healthy? If not 100% healthy, definitely go with Tyrod Taylor. If he's 100% healthy, you definitely go with Tyrod Taylor. He's playing better. He just is. He's showing the ability and the willingness to take shots down the field and allow some of that speed on the outside of these Giants with these Giants receivers to kind of open up the offense. Now, it wasn't like explosive or dynamic this past week. I mean, you know that. You did the game. But for two quarters, it looked really efficient. And couple that with the fact that the defense is playing better and that he is moving the football. I mean, last week, a couple of bad decisions by the coaching, maybe him, whoever made those, some of those in-game decisions, in-the-game decisions. They scored a bunch of points last week against the Buffalo Bills. So if it's me, if guys are responding to Tyrod Taylor or Tyrod, stick with them. In the real thing, the real issue, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago, Saquon Barkley being back makes this a better team no matter who is at quarterback. Mm-hmm. But right now, I stick with the hot hand. You got to try to get yourself out of the basement of the NFC East. And I think this guy's doing the very best job, a better job at it than Daniel Jones was doing at the beginning of this season. They're +3, by the way, at home, technically at home, versus the New York Jets this week.
They're both at home. That's what
I know. But as dogs, 135 +135, I might take the Giants here. I could think about doing that. Yeah, they're technically at home. They don't share a home locker room. They each have their own locker room. This is like an oxymoron. Have the Giants as a home.
True.
The only thing different is that all the pictures in the building will be flipped towards the Giants.
No, they'll stay. They were there last week, so they'll stay with the Giants.
I like it. All right. Ask you, ask me, part 2. Question for Tiki Barber. I see how you didn't interject at all on that question I just did. Good job. Good job. Is Lamar Jackson becoming even better than he was in his 2019 MVP season, Tiki?
That is my favorite conversation of the year. So we had Baltimore early, and we talked to Todd Monken, the new offensive coordinator, and he said, we feel like he hasn't been unlocked yet. I was like, man, the dude won an MVP. What do you mean he hasn't been unlocked yet? He did a lot of that with his legs, like rushing for 1,000 yards. And I mean, as a team collectively, because you had to worry about the 6th skill guy, the 2nd rusher, or maybe even the 3rd rusher when Lamar Jackson was in the game. The team rushed for 3,000 yards, 3,000 plus yards they did in those seasons early in his career. By the way, average, like a really great average year for any other team is like 2,100, 2,200 yards. So it just tells you how dynamic of a player he is. But this year, Ronde, he's completing passes at 71% clip, and he's already rushed for 363 yards and 5 touchdowns. He is definitely better, or becoming better than he was that MVP season, because his passing acumen is starting to get realized. And it's all because of the challenge that his new offensive coordinator has put on him. And so were there fits and starts early in the season? Yeah. Were there some frustrating tight games? Absolutely. But when it all gets put together, as we talked about before with in the Detroit Lions game, Lamar Jackson is going to be one of the most dynamic players in this league. And if he's running less, even though more productively, he's likely to stay healthy. We're not going to get that he's out after 10 games, or he's going to miss 3 games at the end of the season. If he stays healthy, this team can beat anybody because he is so explosive. There's that X factor that's still always there. Like things aren't working out, just tucks it and goes, that you always have to be terrified about. And at Arizona this week, Rondé, on the road against a Jonathan Gannon-led team who we briefly mentioned earlier, who's they're waffling. You kind of want to feel good about them because Josh Dobbs had a good season, or good start to the season. James Conner's a good runner, but this team feels like they are in quasi rebuild-ish. It's 8.5 on the road. I mean, that might be light. If I was a bet man, it'd be Baltimore coming off that enormous victory against the Detroit Lions, covering the 8.5 in Arizona.
Home dogs, man, they're all over the place this year. It's like a theme week in and week out. Lamar Jackson leading his team in rushing, by the way, as we all expect. And a good thing about him leading his team in rushing, if you're a running back on the Baltimore Ravens, it means you're going to have like a 4 or 5 yard per carry clip every time you touch the ball. He just makes it easier for you to run the football. All right,
let's get some picks, Rondé.
Yeah, let's get some games.
Who do you like?
All right. My favorite game of the week is a team we talked about earlier, the Jacksonville Jaguars, at the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are, guess what? Home dogs. Steelers are 2.5 here. The over-under is 42. And if you're a betting man on the Steelers, it's plus 125, minus 145 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, I think this game sets itself up to be one that might surprise you. They already talked about the Jaguars coming in, having won 4 straight games. We know what they're doing on offense with all those skill position players. That being said, the Pittsburgh Steelers just went on the road to Los Angeles Rams and beat a team that was really kind of starting to find itself. And I'm not going to say Kenny Pickett is there yet. I can't quite say that.
Yeah.
But the Pittsburgh Steelers, in reality, are a team that has a chance to compete in the AFC North. And I don't think I would have said that with complete confidence just a couple of weeks ago. They're 4-2. They're half a game, whatever that is, behind the Baltimore Ravens right now, and they know that this is a big opportunity for them to beat one of the hottest teams in football. So for me, at home, Mike Tomlin, he have not been in this position in a while where they have a winning record at this point in the season, even though he still doesn't have a losing season. They've not been this good this early in the season in a while. I'm going to say they're going to stay hot here and find a way to beat Jacksonville in Pittsburgh. Plus 125, I think I'm taking that.
Yes, the other one that I'm looking at, Rondé, and it's only because I just had him, so this is kind of cheating, but it's a home dog again. The Washington Commanders are getting 6.5 points against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Giants got after 6 sacks. I don't know how many pressures were in this game, and playing the Philadelphia Eagles, who are, as we talked about earlier, one of the hottest teams in football offensively. They're going to put up points because A.J. Brown is almost unguardable, and Devontae Smith, he's dynamic. Their run game is good, but their defense has been fantastic in Philadelphia. We saw them shut down Miami and frustrate the hell out of them. But Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick, both who have 5.5 sacks on the season, and Jalen Carter, the rookie from Georgia, they dominate up front. And if there's one way for this Commanders team to be had, it's up front. The 6.5 number is interesting because it's just under a touchdown. And I'm always wary of Vegas when they give you just under a touchdown. But knowing what's happening internally with the Commanders, and there's a little bit of splintering going on, a little bit of frustration starting to percolate, especially defensively, I like Philadelphia laying 6.5 on the road, just down the road in DC this weekend.
All right, real quick, Tiki, there's another minus 6.5 game this week.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Los Angeles Rams versus the Cowboys, coming off a bye week. Again,
them boys.
The boys against the Rams. Again, Rams coming in their own, trust me. Cooper Kupp's back. Dallas is always kind of, what are they? What do you like? 6.5?
This is a tight one, because if they get after Matthew Stafford, then Dallas will destroy him. But with Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, Cooper Kupp is healthy. They have a plethora of receiving options that can be, get loose in that secondary, especially without Trayvon Diggs healthy. He's out for the season. So Dallas is a little bit stretched in their secondary.
All right.
Dallas is home. They're the favorite. I'm going to go with the road dog.
Oh, I like it.
I think the Rams are going to find a way, and it's going to create even more strife down in Big D. Right. Everybody's questioning what the future actually is of Dak Prescott and O.
Right. This is the perfect game to exemplify parity in the NFL. If you go on the road and win this, and kudos, gives me a chance to talk about Raheem Morris' defense with nobody. They have one player on defense. Right. Aaron Donald is the only player anybody knows on that defense.
Right.
And they're finding a way to stay in game. So I like it. Close us out, dude. That's your job. Close us out.
All right. That does it for episode 9 of week 8 of Ronde and Tiki, presented by SuperBook Sports. Enjoy your footballing this weekend. We'll see you next week.
The Ronde and Tiki podcast is produced by SuperBook Sports. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in Colorado, Maryland, Nevada, New Jersey, Ohio, and Tennessee. In Iowa, call 1-800-BETS-OFF or visit 800betsoff.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342.